He simply wrapped his arms around his wife, but she pressed a blade against his throat. The reason she resisted so strongly was that the man standing before her might not be her real husband. Her husband of the past knew only violence, yet this man offered endless tenderness and deep affection. So, who was this man, really? It all began on the day her husband, missing for 6 years, miraculously appeared right before her eyes. She stared into the distance in disbelief, ignoring the pastor who had been courting her. She took the photo of her husband that had been put away for years, placed it back on the table, and tidied herself up to welcome him home. No one could have imagined that after vanishing on the battlefield 6 years ago, Jack would return alive. His wife took their son to the door to greet him. When Jack saw his family, his heart seemed thrown into turmoil as well. By all accounts, the husband she used to know would likely have been furious that she wasn't there sooner, and would have flown into a rage. Yet, to her surprise, Jack was incredibly gentle with their son, even taking the initiative to pull him into a hug. However, the family dog barked in warning because the man standing there felt completely like a stranger. To celebrate Jack's safe return, the villagers threw a party in his honor. Laurel watched him from the shadows. She noticed that while Jack's appearance hadn't changed much, his mannerisms revealed an elegance and tenderness she had never seen before. Even an old friend sensed something was off immediately. Faced with his friend's doubt, Jack simply explained that he had suffered a severe head injury. To escape the awkward atmosphere, Jack pulled his wife onto the floor for a dance. After they returned home, Jack tried to get closer to his wife, but was met with a cold response. Still wary of this strange husband, Laurel took the family heirlooms and hid them away. But she didn't expect Jack to suddenly appear in the room. She froze, struck by sudden fear. Her breathing grew rapid and shallow. Laurel finally let out a sigh of relief. With her help, Jack began shaving off the beard he'd grown over the years. The intimacy of the moment compelled Jack to wrap his arm around her waist, but just then, Laurel suddenly pressed the razor against his throat. Jack could only awkwardly withdraw his hand. Once he was clean-shaven, Jack shed his former wild image. Looking at this husband who felt both familiar and strange, Laurel voiced the doubts she had buried for so long. She couldn't understand why Jack had suddenly become so gentle. This change made him feel like a stranger, and it left her feeling unsettled. Early the next morning, Jack said goodbye to his wife. He went to inspect his 100-acre farm. Meanwhile, Laurel was plowing the fields as she always did. That was when Orrin found her. During the time Jack was away, Orrin had undoubtedly become Laurel's rock. Out of gratitude and reliance, she had made a promise to him. If Jack didn't return within a year, she agreed she would marry him. However, Jack's sudden return shattered Orrin's hope. He held a deep grudge against Jack because of it, but there was nothing he could do. Just then, their son found that the dog, so lively just yesterday, had turned into a cold, lifeless corpse. He didn't understand why, after his father returned, his favorite dog had died so mysteriously. After burying the dog, Orrin approached Jack. He told Jack that he helped Laurel plow the land every day. Jack was grateful for Orrin's help over the years, but he knew exactly what Orrin's motives were. Back at the house, Jack calmly discussed the matter with Laurel. She openly admitted that during those years, Orrin had looked after her, and their plans to get married next year. But seeing her husband's jealousy made Laurel secretly happy. This husband really did seem different. Who was he, really? Clearly, these subtle emotions were causing her attitude toward him to undergo a quiet change. That night, her husband found a nightshirt. Laurel had hand-sewn it when they were newlywed. However, at the time, Jack had complained it was too small, and scolded her. Because of that, she never made clothes again. Jack apologized for his past cruelty. Laurel once again felt the deep affection Jack now held for her. They spent a tender night together. The next day, Jack went to town to have shoes made. He let his son try driving the carriage, but the boy told him his mother never allowed it. She said it was dangerous, but now, he had a father. In that moment, a brilliant smile blossomed on the boy's face. It was his first time driving, and he felt a freedom and joy he'd never known. When they arrived in town, and the cobbler measured Jack's feet, he was surprised to find they were 2 sizes smaller than before. Jack brushed it off with a quick excuse, avoiding the subject, because right now, he was ready to start his plan. As the village landowner, he held vast amounts of land, but nothing was planted there, and it had gone to ruin. This left the villagers in poverty, so Jack decided to lead the village in growing tobacco. Lacking the startup capital, he encouraged everyone to bring out their valuables to pawn for tobacco seeds. The villagers were hesitant. Just then, Laurel stepped forward. He had originally planned to take the money and run, but her deep love made him decide to stay. And so, the villagers started donating their valuables. To hide his identity during the signing, Jack faked an injury to his right hand, so he had to sign the contracts with his left. Then, taking the collected items, Jack headed to town to trade them for seeds. Everyone still harbored doubt, terrified that Jack would take the money and run. Before Jack left, his son gave him his most prized possession, hoping to contribute something to the family. After Jack Jack departed, the villagers immediately got to work clearing the land. The gloom over the village faded, replaced by a renewed sense of hope. However, as the days went by, Jack still hadn't returned. The villagers grew anxious. Every time Laurel stepped out, she felt the crushing weight of the pressure. She could only tell them firmly, time and again, Jack will definitely come back. Until one day, while the son was milking in the barn, a little dog sneaked inside. Its arrival brought a smile to the boy's face. Then, the door creaked open. The boy stood up to look, and a familiar figure came into view. Just like that, Jack had returned, bringing hope with him. The moment Laurel saw him, the weight was finally lifted from her heart. Excitedly, Jack carried his wife to the bed, showing her the precious tobacco seed. Laurel felt truly blessed. This man was worthy of her trust. Jack distributed the seeds to the villagers, and the land came alive with activity. As the days passed, their love for each other deepened. Under everyone's care, the tobacco thrived and grew strong. But while working nearby, Laurel suddenly fainted. The doctor's diagnosis came quickly. She was pregnant. Jack couldn't believe it. For him, this was the start of a new life. But Laurel looked worried. Compared to the past, this new Jack seems almost too perfect, leaving her with a constant, lingering sense of unease. But her worst fears soon began to materialize. The very next day, Laurel notices 3 drifters arriving at the farm. Whatever they said to him, the usually gentle Jack instantly snapped, becoming a different person entirely. He pulls a knife on them and drives the 3 men away. Determined to uncover the truth behind this, Laurel confronts Jack, feeling both curious and afraid. But when she questions him, Jack is evasive, and even loses his temper like never before. Meanwhile, the Reverend runs into those same 3 drifters, and learns exactly why they got into that confrontation with Jack. They claim Jack is nothing but a fraud, who swindled them out of all their money. So the Reverend goes to see Laurel privately, to share the disturbing secret he learned. He tells her that Jack is an imposter, and says that the drifters knew the real Jack during the war. The real Jack had a distinct scar, a scar that is nowhere to be found on this man. Her husband's drastic changes have indeed kept her suspicious all along. That night, she secretly searches through Jack's cabinet, hoping to find a clue to solve the riddle. She doesn't realize Jack is standing right there, but looking into his determined eyes, Laurel ultimately can't bring herself to pull the trigger. However, late that night, a group of masked men storms into their home. They're attacking because, in these racially charged times, Jack dares to treat black people with dignity. They dump a beaten black man on the floor, and warn Jack to stop distributing land to black people. Jack recognizes the leader of the masked mob. This man poses a serious threat to him, because he knows Jack's real identity. In fact, later on, this man will be the one to expose Jack in court. In the chaos, Jack wrestles the gun away from him, but the weapon accidentally goes off. The masked men scatter in panic. Jack manages to drive them all away. The black workers worry that Jack might turn on them because of the trouble, but Jack assures them, as long as they put in the labor, the land is theirs to keep. Later back at the house, Laurel pauses outside her son's door, and hears Jack comforting the boy. With a husband who steps up like this, it's clear, Laurel no longer cares if he's the real Jack. One day, while Jack is repairing the stable, that crooked preacher tracks him down again. The man lights a torch, threatening Jack, confess his true identity, or the house burns to the ground. Facing the crazed man, Jack knocks the torch away when he's off guard. He jumps down quickly to stomp out the fire, but the preacher isn't done yet. The 2 men grapple violently. Jack is eventually overpowered. In this life or death moment, the sun suddenly appears, turning the tide. The boy's words strike like a hammer, shattering the preacher's last defenses. Later, the moment Jack sees his new daughter, his emotions surge like the tide, immersing the family in pure joy. Eventually, the tobacco is ready for harvest. Looking at the pristine leaves, Jack can't contain his delight. He runs through the fields like a child. Thanks to everyone's hard work, they finally reach the busy harvest season. Everyone is filled with drive and hope. Under the Reverend's witness, Jack holds a christening for his daughter, but just as he basks in this happiness, he's unaware that danger is closing in. When the ceremony ends, 2 officers suddenly appear. They arrest Jack on charges of murder. It turns out, before the real Jack went to war, he killed a gambling buddy in a fit of rage. He disappeared right after the crime. Now that he has returned, he had a blood debt to pay. The townspeople rushed to his defense. He hadn't just brought them prosperity, he had generously shared the land with everyone, even the black farmers who faced such prejudice. But inside the courtroom, multiple witnesses from 6 years ago identified Jack as the killer. The evidence was overwhelming, and Jack was sentenced to death. However, there was one way he could walk free. Back in his jail cell, Laurel desperately pressed him about his true identity. After living together for over a year, she knew for certain he wasn't the real Jack, but his kindness and gentle nature had made her fall deeply in love with him. Now, if he wanted to survive, he had to confess who he really was. If he could prove he wasn't Jack, how could they hang him for another man's crime? With a cool demeanor, he savored the fleeting moments of joy. So, The next day in court, Laurel testified that Jack was not her husband. When the lawyer presented a deed signed by Jack, Laurel insisted the handwriting wasn't his, but the prosecution fought back, arguing that Laurel's claims were purely a desperate attempt to save her husband. Soon after, a new witness appeared. It was the masked man who had threatened them before. He claimed to know this imposter. His real name was Townsend, a con man who had swindled his village and skipped town with the money. Technically speaking, given the witness and the testimony, Jack's true identity was exposed. He should have been released immediately, but unexpectedly, he refused to accept this salvation. Instead, determined to prove his identity, he asked the villagers who believed he was Jack to raise their hand, perhaps motivated by self-interest. The villagers responded, confirming with one voice that he was indeed Jack. Laurel is frantic. She asks Jack why he values his own life so little. He refuses to discuss it further. Laurel is stunned. She studies the man before her. She never expected that, even facing death, he would still be thinking of others. But the more he does this, the more Laurel loves him. She doesn't care about anyone else's interest, nor about her reputation or the children. Right now, she just wants Jack alive. Though their argument is heated, it reveals their truest feeling. In the end, Jack is sentenced to death as the real Jack Sommersby. The day before the execution, Laurel brings good news. The villagers successfully sold the tobacco. Everyone will own their own land. Overcome with emotion, Jack embraces Laurel and tells her the whole truth. He admits that he is, in fact, Townsend, confirming everything the witnesses said in court. It turns out, he spent 4 years in prison with the real Jack, and since he looked so much like him, like a twin brother, Jack told him stories about home every single day. But on the day of their release, Jack was murdered. He buried Jack with his own hands, but as a con man, he deeply regretted his past crimes. So Townsend came to Laurel in disguise, seeking redemption. Laurel can no longer hold back her tears. Townsend would rather shoulder all the guilt than jeopardize the future of Laurel and the kids. Perhaps this was his only choice. Before the execution, Laurel tearfully helps him into the suit she sewed for him herself. Townsend hopes Laurel will be with him at the end, but Laurel cannot bear to watch her beloved die before her eyes. However, the arrival of the guard cruelly cuts their final farewell short. At the very last moment, Jack gives Laurel a most precious gift. Laurel rushes forward desperately, confessing the love she has held back for so long. After Townsend was led away, Laurel didn't hesitate to put on that gift. It was a ring symbolizing pure love. Jack was taken to the execution ground, and the entire town came to see him off. In the final moments of his life, he couldn't see Laurel in the crowd. Laurel, although for us, Sommersby is a romantic, retro, and aesthetic love story, it is more than just a typical romance. It imbues an imposter with true emotion and honor. He protects the community's assets, sacrificing his life for an ideal that moved even the judge. In youth, one dreams unknowingly. Upon waking, one must return. The film's direct, intent, and poetic embrace of death feels worlds apart from us, who are pragmatic to the bone. In the film, the fake Jack leads the villagers to prosperity, protecting their rights with his very life. Perhaps for a truly repentant villain, turning over a new leaf isn't actually that difficult personally. The hard part is that society still views him as a villain. The scene where he buys seed, though not shown in detail, must have been Townsend's most conflicted moment. Perhaps he just intended to scam them and run, but he unexpectedly fell in love with Laurel, and unexpectedly earned everyone's trust. The courtroom debate brings the story to its climax. Although it seems Jack acted for everyone's benefit by choosing this legally binding name and identity, even at the cost of giving up his love with Laurel, perhaps his choice was to find life through death. It was to completely bid farewell to the notorious Townsend of the past. In the memories of his beloved and the villagers, he would no longer need to feel compromised or guilty. He just wanted to come home. The movie ends in tragedy, but perhaps it is precisely because of this tragedy that the story is so moving. As the white hood was placed over my head, I looked back on my life, both long and brief. In those long years, I committed countless sins, but in this brief single year, I have redeemed my soul. I hope my tombstone reads, beloved husband and honorable father. In this vast, hazy world, beneath the boundless sky, though separated by life and death, my longing is beyond words, like an old friend returning.